This is really when you leave the bleachers and you get on the playing field, because the brain immediately looks around in its environment to see if anything's changing because you're changing, and you see that nothing in your world is changing because you actually haven't fully changed yet. So the moment we look for evidence in our life and we don't see it, sooner or later, most people accept that thought, which leads to the same choice, which creates the same behavior, which creates the same experience, that produces the same feeling. And then they say, oh, this feels right to me. No, that feels familiar, because you've just returned back to the known self. I think that when people truly want to make up their mind to change, and they become so conscious of those unconscious thoughts, they would never go unconscious to them again. That's the moment the body is being reconditioned to a new mind. If you inhibit that choice, that leads to that habit or that behavior. A habit is when you've done something so many times, the body knows how to do it better than the brain. Now you're stopping the body from being on its automation, on autopilot. And if the body's craving the feeling of unworthiness and you're stopping the body from feeling that way, and you're aware in your life how you speak, you're aware in your life how you're feeling, and you're checking in, you're saying, do I really want to feel this way? This is that river of change where you're going from the old self to the new self. So it makes sense then, if those principles in biology work in that way, they could actually work in our favor. So if you said, okay, I'm going to sit down for a few minutes, I'm going to become so conscious of my unconscious self, my unconscious personality, that victory today would not be going unconscious to those thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. Okay, let me get so familiar with them that I don't go unconscious. Okay, I got that down. Now, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? And if a belief is a thought that you keep thinking over and over again, with intention and with attention, you'll switch on that prefrontal cortex and assign meaning to the act and start installing new circuits in your brain. If you keep doing it over and over again, it becomes more hardwired, it becomes more automatic, and now you're installing a new belief that you are worthy of love, you are worthy of abundance, you are worthy to heal, whatever that is. That's the thought you do want to believe in. And when it matters the most is when it's the hardest. Because if you don't have the circuitry in place, you'll default back to the old programs, right? So then, if you said, how am I going to be in my Zoom calls today? How am I going to be in traffic today? How am I going to be with my ex, my coworkers? And you started thinking about and rehearsing how you were going to act in certain situations. The brain actually doesn't know the difference between the real life experience and what you're imagining. The research on mental rehearsal shows that the brain will look like in time that it's already had the experience and it's vacant of the experience. Now, keep firing and wiring those circuits and you're going to begin to behave that way. So now you're installing circuitry now to use in your life to get your behaviors to match your intentions. If you said, how would it feel to feel worthy of love? How would it feel to be grateful for life? How would it feel to be worthy of abundance? And you said, I'm going to teach my body emotionally what this feels like before the manifestation of the event. You're not waiting for your life to change to feel worthy. You're actually changing your life by becoming worthy. You're generating abundance. You're generating love. You're creating an elevated emotion. Now, our data is so compelling because when you truly begin to elevate your emotional state, and you could really lock in, to those elevated emotions, your body is so objective that it actually believes that it's living in a whole new environment before the environment changes. In other words, the body's believing it's in that new future. And if the environment signals the gene, and it does, and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, you're actually signaling genes ahead of the environment, and your body will begin to become conditioned to a new mind. Now think about this. If you did that every day, the word meditation literally means become familiar with. You become familiar with your old self, you become familiar with your new self, and you say, I'm not getting up until I feel this feeling. And then you'd say, I want to be able to bring this feeling up whenever I want. I'm going to keep remembering this feeling over and over again. It only takes a thought and a feeling, an image of the future and emotion, a stimulus and response, that you can condition your body to believe it's living in a whole new life. And when you feel the emotions of your future, something amazing happens. You're no longer in lack or separation, so you're no longer looking for the event to take away that feeling of lack or separation. Your body's actually believing it's in the event. And so then you're not looking for it. You feel like it's already happened. Get ready, because that's when your life begins to change. And so we've discovered that if you're actually practicing this and you immersed yourself in that experience fully for 7 days, the amount of metabolic and biological changes that will take place in your body will be so significant that your body will actually believe it's living in that future. And yet, most of the people that come to our workshops are literally in a ballroom. There's nothing really exciting happening in the environment, but their body's believing they're living in a whole new life. And so one thought leads to a choice, which leads to a behavior, which creates an experience that produces an emotion. So then new information, new knowledge begins to cause you to think differently. If you can remember that knowledge and begin to make a different choice because you want to experience the truth of that information, you'll have to behave differently. And when the experience occurs and you feel the feeling of your abundance or wealth, I guarantee you're going to continue wanting to make the process of change something consistent in your life. It's an experiment. Life is an experiment. So if your personality creates your personal reality, and your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, if you keep thinking the same way, you keep acting the same way, you keep feeling the same way, your life is going to stay the same because you're the same. So the experiment is, okay, let me begin to think differently. So I got to remind myself how I do want to think, and I have to remind myself of how I no longer want to think, so I don't default and go unconscious. Let me remind myself how I'm going to behave so that I could actually get my behaviors to match my intentions. And let me remind myself of how I'm going to feel. If I'm able to succeed in that day, then there should be some change in my life. It's the experiment. And if it doesn't change, that doesn't mean the law doesn't work for you. It's just you're not that good yet. You just got to keep practicing, right? So the act of disconnecting from your life long enough to remind yourself of who you do want to be and who you no longer want to be, that experiment then is the experiment called life. Now, it's not that you react. The question is, how long are you going to react? That's the real question. Because, I react all the time. Everybody does. But if you're going to stay there and you're going to live in that emotional state, you will see life through that lens of that emotion, right? So now, it gets complicated because the stronger the emotion you feel towards certain people or problems in your life, the more you pay attention to them. And where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So from a purely biological as well as quantum state, we could say then you're using that person or that circumstance to reaffirm your dependence on feeling that emotion. So you have to hate your enemy. And if your enemy dies, you'll find another person to hate, because that is the response, right? So the body is the animal. It's been conditioned a certain way, and if it's been doing something and feeling something for an extended period of time, there's a modification of its receptor sites. It's needing those emotional states. So in the process of change, just be ready, because you're going to feel uncomfortable a lot of the time. Now, the question is, do you want to stay there? So then most people think they don't have any control over their emotional state. They think, I'm just this way and I feel this way. Well, we actually can show people that that's not the truth, that when it's the hardest, it matters the most. And if you're able to really work and train your body like you're training an animal to stop feeling one way and start feeling another way, people do the best with what they think is available. That's my belief. And if you're unaware that you can control your emotional states, you'll rely on something outside of you to do that, whether it's a computer game, whether it's a Netflix show, whether it's a drug, whatever it is that you need to make that feeling go away. You're dependent on your outer world. And I think that's a hypnosis, that's a conditioning. And when you return back into your life and you say, okay, no person, no place, no thing, no object, no circumstance, no pain, no craving is going to cause me to move from this state today. I guarantee you, if you're able to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, something unusual will happen and will come in a way that you least expect, that surprises you and leaves no doubt that what you're doing inside of you is producing some effect outside of you. And the moment you see the feedback in your environment as a result of your internal change, you're going to pay attention and do it again. And you're going to start believing, God, did I really create that? Did that really happen because of how I changed? That's when the game really begins to become exciting.